On December 1st, 2 years ago, Andrew Jones showed my son and I Rephidim and the surrounding area. On the drive out, the sun was setting. Andrew showed us a special rock that is revered by the local Bedouins. I asked Andrew if this could have been the site of the battle with Amalek some 3,500 years ago. Andrew said absolutely, anywhere in this area. The sun had set, so we had to drive back to our hotel in Hakel. Since then, I've wondered if there was a strategic hill nearby that Moses could have stood on to oversee the battle. This possibility was on my mind for 2 years, until Luke and I had the chance to return November 27th of this year into the same area, and yes, there it was. A small hill on the south side of the wide path to Rephidim. The size and height would fit with the Hebrew translation of Geba in Exodus 17:10. This rocky outcropping is exactly in the middle of a vast flat plain, perfectly suited for battle with swords, slings, and camels. It is about 4 miles east from the main south to north route of ancient Midian. At this main route, there's a lot of water because it's at a lower elevation. Rephidim is almost 10 miles east and over 2,000 feet higher. Finding water in this area for a large crowd with animals would be impossible unless miraculously provided. Shortly after parking at the small hill, a Bedouin drove up and wanted to know what we were doing. I think he was just curious. I smiled, greeted him in Arabic, and handed him a bottle of water. I think he thought we were lost because he was pointing to Rephidim around the corner. So in sign language, I explained that I liked this hill. And then Luke started talking about Musa. The guy smiled and he just drove off. Amalek must have been gleeful about trapping the Israelites against the mountain wall with no escape. Even without fighting, he had the upper hand by simply blocking access to the wadi behind him that had life-saving water. His attack was unprovoked. He led a warlike tribe that had no respect for the Hebrew God. In Deuteronomy 25:17, Moses reminds Israel of the attack. The description is of Amalek acting like a lion or wolf in culling the Exodus herd. He cut down the weary, the weak, and the old, as they were simply trying to flee to the safety of Rephidim. God allowed this because of their murmuring and lack of faith. No number is mentioned as to how many lives were lost in the attack, but it must have been in the hundreds, making it a very sad time. They had to be exhausted from fleeing that attack. Their murmuring reached heaven. There's mention of quarreling, but Jehovah stood before Moses on the rock, and Moses struck the rock in the sight of the elders, and water came forth. After taking care of the lack of water problem, Moses turned his attention to defeating Amalek. Exodus 17:18-13 tells us, Then Amalek came and fought with Israel at Rephidim. So Moses said to Joshua, Choose for us men and go out and fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand. So Joshua did as Moses told him and fought with Amalek, while Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. Whenever Moses held up his hand, Israel prevailed, and whenever he lowered his hand, Amalek prevailed. But Moses' hands grew weary, so they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it, while Aaron and Hur held up his hands, one on each side, and the other on the other side. So his hands were steady until the going down of the sun, and Joshua overwhelmed Amalek and his people with the sword. We are told Amalek fled. Centuries later, his tribe returned to terrorize Israel. There's stories with Gideon, Saul, David, and many more who had to deal with the same problem. This story is commemorated by many great paintings and is a wonderful example of divine intervention combined with human effort. Moses interceding appears to be the key to winning this battle, along with Joshua and his chosen men's bravery. Here's what one of my favorite authors concerning Bible commentary wrote about this concept. As the Hebrews triumphed when Moses was reaching his hands towards heaven and interceding in their behalf, so the Israel of God prevail when they, by faith, take hold upon the strength of their mighty helper. Yet, divine strength is to be combined with human effort. Moses did not believe that God would overcome their foes while Israel remained inactive. While the great leader was pleading with the Lord, Joshua and his brave followers were putting forth their utmost efforts to repulse the enemies of Israel and of God. So here's a nice sling stone that I found at the bottom of the Hegabah, the little hill. What a great story.